Now, the federal government on Thursday approved the medium-term expenditure framework for 2025 to 2027 and the fiscal strategy paper. According to the Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Abubakar Bagdu, the MTF covers the proposed 2025 budget size of 47.9 trillion naira, with new borrowings of 9.22 trillion naira. The disclosure comes after weeks of delay as President Bola Tinubu prepares to present the 2025 appropriation bill to the National Assembly, his second since assuming office in May of 2023. Economist and financial expert Esili Eigbe joins me now to discuss the fundamentals of the 2025 budget proposal and the parameters given the state of the Nigerian economy and global oil prices. Good to have you join us this afternoon, or me rather.
Glad to be here. Well, yeah. Always a pleasure.
So 47.9 trillion naira for 2025, 2.06 million barrels per day output, exchange rate of 1,400 naira, and some other projections that are within the 2025 MTF. Now, given this current economic environment, is this even closely accurate, feasible?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, if I were to start, I would start by saying that the assumptions, or the majority of the assumptions, are a bit too optimistic. At 2 million barrels a day, I mean, this year they budgeted about 1.7. We've only done about approximately 1.3, 1.4. The NNPC has been out there saying that we've hit about 1.8, 1.7 between August and November there-ish. But I suspect what they're referring to includes some associated gases and not pure oil production.
Okay.
And if you look at what OPEC has been reporting, they're much closer to about 1.5 million barrels a day, which is an improvement from where we started this year, actually. But back to the budget. I've talked about oil production numbers, but how about the price? The pricing about $78 per barrel, okay? Very unlikely. I know we're around that right now, but a Trump presidency, I suspect, will basically be projecting much lower oil prices. I think the last time I was on this program, I was talking about somewhere around $50. And if you have your ears out there, that's, I think, what a lot of traders are saying. First of all, the U.S. is already producing at high levels, okay? And then some of the OPEC members are also starting to increase production too. So I would say that OPEC is more likely to be loose with quotas going into next year, than tight on quotas. So in that case, I don't see how we can hold up $70 a barrel.
And it seems like the optimism, it's necessary, but it seems not really realistic. And some are wondering if the assumptions for the gaps in the numbers is that the Dangote refinery is somewhat, the silver bullet. Maybe it's going to come on. When it comes on fully, it would, fill in some of those stop gaps and make some of these numbers more feasible, especially with the dollar being freed up. What is your assumption in that?
Those are two different dynamics. A state budget is totally different from, what's happening with a private company. He has his own budget, completely separate from that of the government. If what you're suggesting is whether the fact that he would have been producing a lot more would have more significant implications for GDP in 2025, I would say yes.
There we go. That's exactly what I meant.
That is indeed the case. But, still hearing that we're still importing, tons and tons of processed oil, in gasoline is obviously very concerning when we have a local refinery here that's already producing and have sufficient stock of the product.
And concerning the GDP growth of 4.6%, it is expected for 2025. What indicators do you think that the government was using in order to make these projections?
That's a very good question. So one that I'd like to pose to them too directly. My guess is that that's a very optimistic position on growth. If you have to follow the IMF is projecting somewhere around 3% or just under 3%. And that is around about where I think growth would also be, around 2.8 or thereabout, given the fact that we're not really seeing much going into key productive sectors of the economy. Yeah, if the government told me, for example, that more than half of the proposed budget for 2025 would be going into key productive sectors, power, for example, perhaps road construction. They talked about this Calabar Expressway into Lagos. That would really do something, I think, to the economy. In the same way that Dangote's refinery, I think, will be very, very key to driving growth. Yeah, and perhaps not as inflationary as we would expect, given that, I'll say we haven't seen much on the budget. The devil will be in the detail. We'd like to see what they're hoping to spend some of this money on. But as it is, a government's budget is pretty much an instrument for fiscal policy. And so it kind of has me wondering, are they really serious about tackling inflation? Interestingly, the National Bureau of Statistics published inflation numbers for October this morning. And we're looking at inflation for October at around about 34%. That's headline. Food inflation was much higher, but more notably, we're seeing a 2.9, almost 3% month-on-month growth for food inflation, and about 2.6 for headline month-on-month. Those are still very, very high levels.
Worrying numbers, especially as we skirt around the ember months, the December period. But I wanted to talk about the borrowing because it seems that we've got. Well, actually, let me just go back to the budget and finish off there. The minister has said that they're sending some of these monies off to developmental commissions, and that might be why the numbers seem so large. And of course, with the exchange rate from the dollar to the naira, does this justify this increase from last year's budget?
Like I said, if that's the case, then probably yes.
Okay.
But like I said, the devil will be in the detail.
The actual completion.
We'll have to see what that. But I think something to put out there is that there are only 3 countries outside Nigeria, okay, that are likely to increase state expenditure by more than 50% next year.
Which ones?
Zimbabwe, Sudan, Argentina.
And why is that?
Well, they have issues, and where I'm going is that puts us in a pretty exclusive club.
Of the issues club.
Yeah. So I'll say more worried than I was the last time I was here, because I'm starting to wonder if there are any economists, real economists in the room. Okay, and so I'm more likely at this stage to pivot towards Nigeria getting into an IMF program, okay? Because it significantly reduces the risk of execution as to whatever it is they have going on. Because sitting here and discussing a 55% increase in your expenditure, which even on a dollar basis, okay? Let's even say we use in dollar terms, okay? That would still be plus 30% increase. That's significant.
And people are still wondering where the impact is.
That's my point.
At the end of the day.
Is that we're questioning execution. And I don't think that we have that much room for error.
Failure, even the...
We've been at this now for well over a year, okay? We don't have a grip. We don't have a grip, just to be very clear.
And speaking of the lack of a grip, borrowing, what do you make of this $2.2 billion external borrowing program, including the Eurobonds, the Sukuk financing? Shouldn't we all be a little bit weary of collecting loans?
That's exactly what I'm saying. If you decide that you want to spend more, clearly that means you're going to have to borrow more. Mm-hmm. Even if oil prices were at $100 a barrel next year, average throughout the year, okay? And we're producing also 2 million barrels per day throughout the year. We still wouldn't be able to balance the budget, okay? At 47.9 trillion. We'll still need to borrow money.
It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
But in your opinion, I mean, you said it seems like there are no economists in the room sitting there helping with the decisions. You're an economist. What would you advise?
I think that they need to cut that budget significantly. At this stage, I honestly don't care even if some of those funds are going to developmental projects. Government has never been an efficient allocator of capital, okay? So my position is that let's shrink the budget, let's shrink the government, okay? And empower the private sector instead. Let the government create the enable environment for private sector to thrive, yeah? Judicial reforms, and a lot of all those necessary reforms that they need to continue to pursue. Security, boosting oil output, ultimately revenue. That itself has the impact of also starting to help with the currency. Mm-hmm. You see an appreciation in the Naira, which I'd argue today is probably, undervalued, okay? And then we start to, I would say, create an environment that internationals and locals deem conducive enough to start to investing or bring money into. As of today, foreign direct investment is still significantly low. And it's because of that, everything I'm talking about. If you have inflation of plus 30%, there's no investor in their right mind that want to bring money because Absolutely the moment you're bringing in that money, you're already having a 30% haircut already. So you need a pretty stable environment. Again, going back to my statement earlier, as the budget being an instrument for fiscal policy, what you're signaling is that you're not interested in resolving this problem of inflation, okay? You're still very much expansionary. 55% increase on a year that itself was significantly high. It's reckless, I think, to say the least.
Yeah,
Did that answer your question?
Yes, very much so. I guess this one is more of a philosophical, sociological question. What is the problem with us not cutting our code according to its size? What is with this overspending, knowing the dire consequences, the situation, and the globe in general? Yeah. What is it? Why can't we do it?
The simple answer is corruption, vested interest. That's what I suspect. How many development institutions do you know today in Nigeria do you think the government can allocate, perhaps have this budget to, and you're very confident it can deploy it efficiently to get what needs to be done?
Yeah.
How many? Which ones? Which developmental institutions? Just name one. Just name one. Oh. One that's been efficient at deploying capital.
I'm drawing a blank here.
Yeah. So
it's hard to.
So am I.
Really. But
like I said, shrink the government, allow the private sector to do what it knows how to do best.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And just before I let you go, inflation rate, it's gone up to 33.8% this month. How is this going to impact the budget and the proposals?
Again, my point is, staring at inflation as high as it is, and you're still comfortable going ahead to raise expenditure by 55%. Again, I want to know who that economist is in that room, okay? There's perhaps endorsed this or, signed off on this, okay? But like I said, I worry about execution a lot, and that's why I'm starting to say, perhaps we just pivot to an IMF program. We've taken the pain already. They wanted, fuel subsidy removed. That's gone already. I think almost half of the subsidies on electricity as well are gone. Mm-hmm. And I think that we've already done so much on the reform front. The currency has been liberalized, So we've taken the pain. Just why can't we get into a program, okay? We can also borrow money. We can have some of our existing debt and payments basically restructured so that we're paying less in the short term, okay? But then we can conserve some of that revenue and deploy it to either investing in capital projects, paying salaries, etc., okay? But paving the way for further inflation, because something needs to give, okay? So to just put an equation out there, if you're putting so much into the economy, okay, and if that's not translating into real growth, like I said, productive economies translating into real growth, okay, what happens? the currency takes a hit. The currency is a valve. It's pretty much a valve. In that, like when you're eating, right? If you stuff yourself up, it doesn't matter how much you eat, okay? Your body can only absorb so much. Where does the rest of it go?
In that other place. So I think we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for coming in. I'd ask you for a word of advice for Nigerians, but maybe when you come back, we can pick back up, because let's hope things change, but they're probably not going to change that much. Esili, Eigbe, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Of course, you are an economist and financial expert. Good to have you here on.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.